Hey everybody, this is Mr. Farmer, and today we're talking about market structure very briefly, but mostly focusing on perfect competition and then finally profit, loss, and everything in between. So for the four different market structures, there's perfect competition, monopoly competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. And here's a table that kind of tells you everything you need to know, review it if you need to, but again, we're focusing on perfect competition going forward. So the reason why I focus on perfect competition is that it's the simplest of all of them. As you keep going, there's more and more details, there's more differentiation, and that just causes more chaos. So in order to talk about focus on to build those blocks, we start with the simplest one. A couple of things to remember. Perfect competition or pure competition rarely actually occurs in the real world. Agriculture might be something that comes close to it. So again, why do we talk about it? Because we can identify pricing and output to start with the basic. Each person provides a standard, and it's also perfect competition. So is the most efficient competition outcome out there, and then everything else is going to be an imperfect competition. That's going to be the other models we'll look at later on. So quick overview. Large number of suppliers. We're going to assume for all of these just a large number of consumers just for ease. They have a standardized or homogeneous or identical product, and the individual firms are what's called price takers, meaning no one firm has enough market share to control the price, and so they have to take whatever price is given or identified by the entire industry. Each individual firm will take, hence price takers or price receivers. And last, we're going to get into this actually a little bit towards the end, is there's people can enter and leave the market in the long run. Very important it's in the long run as we talk about. Products are perfectly elastic. The reason why is there's a large number of sellers and they're perfectly identifiable or perfectly substitutable. Hence the prices will always be the same because there's an identical product readily available to look at. Okay, so for that reason, we're going to see a perfectly elastic demand curve. And yes, that actually does mean something. It's going to be very important. The other ones, because there is some substitutability, they're not perfectly elastic. There's going to be some slight downward angling to the demand curve itself. Okay, a couple of equations we're going to be seeing. Average revenue, you actually rarely ever see this, but it is technically something, which would be the revenue per unit. It's the price of the whole unit. Total revenue is price times quantity. We saw it before in a whole bunch of different times. And then we have another marginal. In this case, marginal revenue, which you can see is change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. Now, because we are a perfectly competitive firm, because we're perfectly horizontal, because we're perfectly elastic, we have marginal revenue equals demand equals average revenue equals price. All four of those will be equal only for perfect competition. Later, demand will be equal to average revenue equal to price, the other three market structures. So sometimes you get this guy named Mr. Dark. A is just kind of a nice way to remember that one. So this is going to be what's going to look like graphically. We call this a side-by-side graph. I'm guessing you can guess why. So we notice the supply and demand graph is actually the industry. It's the whole market for perfect competition. But we added something. We're also looking at the individual firm, hence this right side of things. And again, this is perfectly horizontal because whatever the industry identifies, these guys need to price all their goods at that way. So the price stays constant for the firms, no matter how many units they sell. Concerns with only demand, meaning that you want to buy from that company if it's set at that price. For example, if the price stays at consistent $10 per unit, you sell 1 unit or 10 units, total revenue divided by that quantity is always going to be 10. Same is going to be true with the marginal revenue. Each additional unit is also going to equal 10. Why? Because as you sell 1 additional unit, you gained $10. And your marginal revenue is always going to be 10 for this example. All that said, Mr. Dark is for perfect competitions only. Very important there. So I can kind of give you a visual idea here. So when you sell that first unit here, you're told the industry says you got to sell for $10. If somebody sells it for $12, they're not selling anything. And for mostly cost reasons, they're not going to, suppliers don't want to sell it at $8. $10, that's where you have to go. So when you sell the first unit, you're going to sell it for, you guessed it, $10. So when you sold 0 units, you made $0. When you sold 1 unit, you made $10. So marginal revenue is going to be 10. You sell your second unit, it's going to sell for $10. So now you have a total revenue of $20. So here's going to count my total revenue there. $20, 10 to 20 dollars, and it's going to be true for all these different ones. My marginal revenue is going to be 10. My consumers are only going to buy this good if it's sold at $10. We're trying to identify profit maximizing, which is going to be the output at which you make the most money. There's 2 ways to do this. The first way is obvious. If you have the total revenue, subtract the total cost, when the largest amount is there, that's your profit maximizing output, sell to that unit. Here's a question. Before you produce those units, how do you know when this is going to happen? So although, yes, this is true, realistically, you don't really use it that much. Let me get a little pointer. You don't really use it that much. Okay, it's to check your work and that kind of stuff. What we do use is this marginal revenue, marginal cost effect. We're going to profit maximizing occurs at the quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Is going to identify that. This is true for all the market structures. Doesn't matter if it's perfect competition or anything else. So why is this the case? Well, let's take a look at this. So if we draw just a basic marginal revenue graph, something like that, and marginal cost. Let's just say it's upward and downward sloping for simplicity's sake. Well, if I only produce where there's the largest gap between these two, yeah, I get the most of it, but let's just say that occurs at the first unit. But the second unit, I get this much marginal revenue. It only costs me this much. So I make a profit between these two things. So I would want to produce that. That makes me money. Well, if I go to my third unit, well, if I'd stop my first, well, it costs me this much. I'll say C3, here will be C2, for instance. 2. But I would have missed out on this amount of revenue. So let's go ahead and go to, let's just say it ends up at 4, okay? I go into where these equal, not because, oh, I'll make a ton of money from this one, but that way I make sure I get the most amount of revenue per cost for all the units. If I'd stopped just a little bit short, like right here, 3.5 units, for example, then I would have missed out on this much revenue per cost. That's what we do where they're equal and not the largest amount. So, profit maximizing. So here we go. If we had done this before, here's my margin revenue going all the way across. So where should I produce? Where these two things intersect. We saw some from earlier. This is my marginal cost curve. So where those two intersect, that's the profit maximizing output. So with all of that work done, we now know how much to produce. We don't know if I'm making a profit, loss, or anything else yet. So there's 4 possibilities. The first one is I can make a profit. So for all of these, this is true for all market structures. So when I'm producing at the profit maximizing output, so at a certain quantity, whatever that profit maximizing is, I can have 4 scenarios. First one is I can make a profit. So once I figure my quantity, at that quantity, I'm comparing my price to my average total cost. If my price is greater than my average total cost, I'm making a profit. For instance, if my price was $20, that would be the average revenue, that would be the price, that would be my demand. Please notice I compare my price for perfect competition, margin revenue is equal for demand. For all the other ones, that's not going to be the case. So please do use price. I know you get in the habit of using perfect competition first though. Okay, my average total cost is $10, then yeah, I make a profit of $10 per unit actually. This is my per unit profit because I get an average right price of $20, an average cost of $10. So per unit, I've made 10. So for total unit or total profit, I would need to multiply by whatever this quantity is. Second scenario. So that's where your price is equal to the average total cost, again, at that quantity. So regardless of what the margin revenue curve, the demand curve, ATC, whatever they look like, I'm comparing at that quantity, what's my price compared to my average total cost. If my price is $20, my average total cost is $20, then your breaking even. And again, we're in econ class. This is the economic costs. Just a reminder about that. Third one, and this is where we're going to remember the ATC minus AVC conversation from earlier. So the third one is minimizing loss. This is where you would still produce, but you're producing at a loss. Your price is below your average total cost. So why would you do this? Well, really, we're talking about short run. In the short run, you cannot leave or enter the market. That's only in the long run. So in the short run, since your price can cover your operational costs, your variable costs, then it is beneficial to produce. You're going to minimize, you're going to lessen how much you lose. Let's look at this. So if your price is $20, your average total cost is $30, you're losing money. $10 per unit, it's not fantastic. But again, your price is $20. If your average variable cost is $15, that means by operating, you do get this price, you do get that revenue, and your revenue can cover your costs, and then it exceeds it. I can put this $5 extra, that $5 surplus, to cover part of my average fixed cost. So instead of losing all fixed costs, I'm losing $5 less per unit than I would have otherwise. So yes, I would still operate in order to reduce my losses. Last one is a shutdown scenario, and this is where your price is below your average variable cost. So if you produced your goods, you get $20 per unit that you sold. Operational costs are $25, and those will occur if you operate. Average variable costs, your variable costs are operational costs. They only exist if you run your business. They can't cover your operating costs. So you know what the best thing to do is? Just don't do anything. Don't turn the lights. Don't have your hourly workers come that day. Don't buy any more flour for your bread. Just pay the rent. Yes, you're going to lose money, but you'll lose less by just doing nothing, actually. And again, we assume profit is the only motivator. So graphically, kind of really quickly, we would have a side-by-side graph on here. So we would have the industry on the left-hand side. Put on the left or right, I usually put on the left-hand side. But I'm going to look at the individual firm. This is what it looks like. Okay, my price going all the way across, my average revenue, my margin revenue, my demand, they're all equal. I'm producing at my output Q because my margin revenue is equal to my marginal cost. And you notice that at this point, my average total cost and my margin revenue, my demand curve and all that, they're equal to each other. Okay. So this is going to play a role as far as allocated efficiency, productive efficiency, all that kind of stuff. For instance, on the left-hand side, we would have had our supply equal to our demand curve. And as we've seen in previous units, when your supply and demand are equal, you're allocatively efficient. Let's just kind of draw it really quickly over here. So your supply and our demand, and we have our consumer and producer surpluses. That's maximized. You're at your allocatively efficient output. Again, this is happening in perfect competition. Second, are you producing at your minimum average total cost? Question mark there. Yeah, you are. You're producing where your marginal cost is equal to your average total cost. So if you break even in perfect competition, you're actually productively efficient as well. And this is going to play a role when you're talking about long run changes. Getting ahead of myself, that's actually, we're still in short run though. So right now we're breaking even. This area right here from the green all the way down, this would be my area of total revenue. And then from here to my average total cost of that output and down, oh, look at that. They're equal to each other. We're breaking. Okay. So profit in the short run, okay, that would be if your price was up at this point. And again, I'm just kind of saying there's a supply and demand curve over here. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So at this point, we get a different color on here. Go red, green. Okay, here's my price. Go down to my average total cost curve right there. Again, from here down to here is my price. And if I go kind of straight across right here, from here down to here is my average total cost. Price minus average total cost equals profits. So this from section from right here to right here, that line right there, that would be my per unit profits. This green area is my area of profit. Now again, the rules only apply for margin over margin cost if it's preferable than shutting down. So this is where the supply curve gets a little nitpicky. We will shift to having the margin cost be the supply curve. That's when we don't have perfect competition because we have a supply curve there. Okay, so this is going to come back and go play later also. Second scenario is minimizing loss. So this is going to be this area. So right here in my quantity, I'm just going to kind of draw a line straight on through everything. My price compared to my average total cost, I'm losing money. I'm losing this much money. Okay, so here's my average total cost right here. Here's my price. I'm losing money. But the question is, should I still operate? In this case, the answer is yes, still operate. Here's why. Right now, again, from here down to here is my average fixed cost. And no matter what, if I operate or don't, I have to pay this. This is the rent. This is the internet subscription, whatever else this. No matter, I have to pay this. But if I continue to operate, I can cover part of this. Yes, I can cover my operational cost, and that's good because I need to cover that first, but then I cut into this. So I'm going to lose less money than if I don't operate. Or that because if I do not operate, I will lose this whole red area because that's my total fixed cost. I'd rather just lose out than green. So yes, I'd still operate in the short run. Long run, later on. Last one is shut down. Okay. Again, graphically, you're going to shut down your prices below your average total cost curve. And so for this reason, my margin cost curve works as my supply curve mostly. But then anywhere below my average variable cost curve doesn't occur. So right here on up will become our eventual supply curve when we don't have it available. So no, you would not operate there. So let's check. Again, here's the area of profit. That'd be break even. Minimizing loss. Shut down. If you're not sure why, go back in the slide, maybe help me figure that out, but those will be the 4 different places. So short versus long run. Remember that in the long run, firms can enter and leave the industry, the party also. And so this is when we talk about the industry supply curve. Again, remember, one of the determinants is number of suppliers. So as this number changes, the supply curve can also change. So if there's a profit to be had, firms are going to want to enter into this market. If people are operating at a loss, you're not going to want to. So if at first you're operating at a profit, firms are going to want to enter in the long run. Remember, everything else stable, but in the long run, firms can enter. That's going to drive the supply curve down. Demand doesn't change in the long run. Just assume that. And consumers, they don't care if it's short or long run, they just want the price. So that's driven the price down, and it drives down until there's no longer a motivation to enter or leave the party, okay, to leave this industry. And so guess what? In the long run, they break even. In the long run, they're productively efficient. In the long run, they're allocatively efficient. For perfect competition, this is why they're called perfect competition. They're perfectly efficient in those 2 ways. What about if they're losing money? Well, at first they're losing money. Here we have minimizing loss scenario. Well, then firms are going to leave this industry. They're going to leave until, guessed it, they break even. And yes, in the reality, they might be a little more fluctuation going up and down and up and down and up and down. We're just going to assume they go to the break even level. Okay, so let's do some practice with this. Let's kind of see what we think would happen at this point. So for instance, let's start with this one. Okay, so is this a short run or a long run decision? Okay, so it would be a short run. You know that because it is in between the ATC and AVC, so this is a minimize and loss scenario. So what happens in the short run, because firms will definitely have to leave at this point. Up the next one. What do you think this would be? Short run or long run? Profit, break even, minimize and loss. What do you think? This would be a profit. You know that because at this point, at this output, margin revenue equal margin cost, the price is greater than the average total cost. So again, this would also be a short run conversation. So until they break even, that you would have the question if it is in the long run or not. So hopefully that helped clarify some stuff. If you need to review this, definitely do so. Thanks.